Taking It to the Streets. This is called Taking It to the Streets, Toastmasters in the Real World. My guests today are Rebecca Now and Yolanda Wood. I am your host, Laura Mather. And our format, so you'll know what our hour is going to be like, is the first part. I'm going to do an interview with each guest separately to just get to know them. We might call it Table Topics One-on-One. And part two, I will interview each guest separately to learn how their Toastmaster skills have been brought into the real world and impacted others. So what I'm going to do is ask my host, my Zoom master, to spotlight my first guest, whom I'm going to select as Rebecca Now. So if we have Rebecca highlighted, then we can have...
It is not giving me the option to do so.
Okay, well, I think we can still proceed because I've got Yolanda and Rebecca, and I will ask Yolanda to turn off her video for a few minutes while I interview Rebecca. Okay, Rebecca, I'm so pleased to have you on today. Today, we want to learn a little bit in this first part about you. And I want to know where you were born and raised.
First of all, thank you for inviting me and for being part of this TLI. I grew up in Webster Groves, Missouri, did all my schooling there. I was physically born in Ohio, but moved here when I was like 4. So I went to all the Webster Groves public schools. I went to University of Missouri for 2 years. I love the area, and it is home to me because I lived 27 years in California, and then I'm a boomerang and came back in 2005.
Okay, I'm going to do a quick stop share to see if that puts us better on the screen for our audience to see us. Okay. That's no problem. Okay, so you're raised in Webster Groves, or is it Grove?
Plural, Grove.
Groves, okay.
Yeah.
Did you do your schooling all through in that area?
Grade school, middle school, high school, all of it.
Okay,
yeah.
So now you lead me right to question 2, which is share with us your first work experiences. Where did you first touch the real world?
The real world. I was, during high school, I worked part-time at this Tiger Den burger place. It was sort of a Burger King wannabe in the 1960s. And we would serve Cub burgers and Tiger burgers. And I had to wear a white polyester uniform. And I just remember smelling like a Cub burger every time I came home from work. So that was high school. In college, I waited tables in a pancake house. And then after that, I'm trying to think, moving to California, my career started with Macy's department stores in San Francisco, which was a very wonderful, wonderful training program, and I loved it. And I rose through the ranks to be a buyer of candies, chocolates, and then they gave me gourmet food and wine, and we were right next to the wine country north of San Francisco, and it was a really tough job, but I enjoyed it thoroughly and appreciate my Macy's experience. And then after that, I was recruited for a merchandise manager job that had me relocate to San Diego, California. So that was fantastic. And the company was called Sweet Factory, and they wanted to open up a chain of candy stores. And I worked for them for 2.5 years, had my daughter at the time. And then that one didn't take off to their liking. I was let go. You know, what do they call it? The ultimate new door opening when they let you go. And I opened my own candy store. And it was called Make Mine Sweet. And it was chocolates, gift baskets, bulk candies. We were right next to a movie theater, so you could buy your gummy bears or sweet and sour worms, whatever you wanted before the movie. And I did that for, I don't know, almost 3 years. 9/11 happened during that time, and nobody wanted to buy chocolate or gift baskets. They wanted to go home and hug their kids and put in a security system. And I ended up selling the business the following January for all cash and walked away. And then I did a number of sales jobs. I divorced my husband, sold the house. Daughter and I are living in a apartment that is actually 2 miles from the beach in San Diego. It wasn't the worst thing in the world. But I kept coming back to St. Louis for summer holidays with my daughter and for Christmas. And returning to St. Louis became a magnet. And so we relocated here in 2005.
Okay, well, thank you. Those are things about you I had never known before. My last question in our session is, so we've got you back in St. Louis in 2005. So who, what happened that brought you to Toastmasters?
Well, I remember vividly having to give a small speech when I was at Macy's as a manager. And I fumbled with it so badly. I know I needed help. And I had taken a night school class in speaking, but then when I moved to San Diego, I had a dear friend who was involved in Toastmasters. She invited me. So I actually joined Toastmasters in 2004 before I moved here. And then I was the queen of ahs and ums and filler words. And they used to ring a very loud bell with every single filler word. And boy, did that work. That really got rid of it quickly. So when I moved back to St. Louis area in 2005, I explored a few clubs, and it really didn't work until my daughter went off to college in 2010. And then I got super involved and I discovered Webster Grove's Toastmasters. And I stayed with that through my DTM in 2019.
All right. Well, thank you for bringing me to your Toastmasters. I have more questions in part 2 that will cover what your experience was like there and what you have done since, and some of those community activities that I know you're involved in, and especially the ones that are dear to your heart. So now I'm going to ask you to turn off your video and bring Yolanda on.
Okay.
Yes, you rang.
And I'm going to ask my Zoom master to keep it. Oh, she did it. Thank you, Rebecca. Appreciate that. Okay, to begin, Yolanda, I have known you. I have always pronounced your name wrong. I'm really concentrating today to make sure I get it right. But I want you to tell me where you were born and raised.
I am the typical Air Force brat, which means I have traveled a good portion of the world. I was born on Otis Air Force Base, which is in the Boston, Massachusetts area. Then my family was stationed in Spain, came back with my mother to live in St. Louis. For 4 years, my father ended up with custody. We went to California. And after California, my Air Force career started at the Air Force Academy in 1982. Graduated 86, became a navigator, a bossy woman around the world. Yes, I am a best paid backseat driver in the Air Force. You might not notice that about me. But I traveled around the Air Force, and my last duty station was here at Scott Air Force Base. So that is why I retired here.
So Air Force, been that all the time.
Well, until I retired.
So I'll let you tell me more about your career through, because I know you landed up there as one of the big wigs. So you tell me how it started and what progressed. And I realize there's a lot of jargon in there, so make it simple.
Not a problem, not a problem. When I went to the Air Force Academy, my goal was to become a non-plane pocket. In the Air Force, if you see items on a person's chest, they've done something. They've got awards and ribbons or job description badges. At the Air Force Academy in college, we had one that if you had a 3.0 GPA, if you were an athletic star, if you were a military leader star, and if you had none of those, you were a plain pocket. I did not want to be a plain pocket in the Air Force. And so I tried to become a pilot. And I've yet, after 20 plus years, determined if this was a slam. I was told I was highly motivated and totally unskilled, but smart enough to be a navigator. So I became a navigator, and my job as a navigator is to fly my airplane anywhere in the world at a specific time. So that's what I did for almost 20 years. I also had the highlights of being a recruiting squadron commander in Los Angeles, which was the biggest area. Of course, lots of the area is water, because my area was from California all the way to Japan. But I was a recruiting squadron commander, and later I came to be a mission planner because they replaced me with computers. Oh, well, their loss. And I retired in 06, taught high school on your side of the river in St. Charles, Missouri for 4 years. And I too was non-retained and given the opportunity to tell them to where they could go. Once I've done that, it took some time off, and then I became a personal trainer. So right now I'm a personal trainer, a Weight Watcher coach, and a sequential series volunteer.
I love that title. I love that title, a sequential series volunteer. That is something we're going to talk more about in the second part of our session. But I want to know, first of all, I applaud your ability to teach high school and to teach it during that age. So that gives me a lot of insight on how I see some of your behaviors go and why I see you gravitating towards kids and the things that kids need to learn and the things they don't get in school. I see you out there doing those activities. When did you decide you needed Toastmasters, and how did you find Toastmasters?
I found Toastmasters at Scott Air Force Base. I've always been a speaker, but I'm that speaker who says, rah, rah, sis, boom, bah. And they said, well, you're highly motivated. And another way to say I was full of hot air that was sometimes punctured when somebody hit reality. When I got to Scott Air Force Base, I was responsible on the floor to do a few briefings. The safety officer, the monthly don't fry a chicken and deep fry right in front of your kitchen, especially a frozen one, little tidbits like that. But I wanted to raise my game from being that person who could get you motivated to the person who could keep you motivated and informed. And Toastmasters allowed me to take that extra step. I'm never going to be the one that talks like this for 20 minutes and is very profound. And if you ask me to repeat the same speech 5 times, it'll be the exact same speech. But the message will be the same. It just won't be the same words in the same order.
Well, thank you for that. Now I'm going to say we're going to close our part 1 with you. So I'm going to ask you to turn off and Rebecca to turn on so we can go into specific questions. Rebecca, where I left you at, you had moved back to St. Louis, Webster Groves, and you had joined Toastmasters. And now I want to hear kind of about what I know about you. I think I consider you an actress. You may not think of yourself in that way, but I want to know how your career in this field got started And how, you might say, did those Toastmaster skills help you? Take it away.
Well, I consider myself a reenactor. I play one role, and it's a historical figure from 1848, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, who was responsible for starting the women's rights movement as an organized entity in the mid-19th century. And I discovered it through Toastmasters. I am forever indebted to Toastmasters for this serendipitous experience to happen. I had done my competent communicator. I'd been a president of club, and I was working on the advanced, and there was a book at the time called Interpretive Reading. And you had 5 assignments in this book. One was to recite a poem. One was to recite a monologue from a play. One was a dialogue from a play. One was a very short story. And the 5th one was to give a speech from history. And I was searching for a specific speech that I could not find. And I must have put in the Google search proclamation. And then I came up with the Declaration of Sentiments and what Elizabeth Cady Stanton had said and written in 1848. I had never heard of this woman. And most people in my generation have not. I would say at least 85% of the baby boomers have no clue. It's getting better with the younger generation. But she was best friends with Susan B. Anthony, which most people at least know the name. Anyway, when I read her speech, I just knew that was what I was going to give. It resonated with me very strongly. And I had to shorten it because in the 19th century, they gave speeches that were 20 minutes to an hour long. So I didn't quite get it to the 5 to 7 minute. The first time I gave it, I think it was close to 10, but I've since edited it down because I do believe short and sweet is very important in our era. So I gave my speech, and my evaluator, Joe Taylor, in Webster Groves Toastmasters, was my evaluator, and I will never forget, and I acknowledged him in my book about this journey. He said to me, "Rebecca, all you need is a costume." And I was so touched and inspired, I went out and had a costume made. And so I had a costume. I found a dressmaker through one of the local theater companies. I had contacted a theater company and said, "Hey, can you put me in touch with a dressmaker who does historical costumes?" And she did, and I got a costume, and I gave it for friends, and then I started giving it for little historical society, and then I got an opportunity to present at the Missouri History Museum, and then the National Parks. So it has become my passion. And I am recently retired. And when I say recent, I mean in the last week, I retired from my job, if you want to get into it that later. And this is what I'm retiring into. And I have since written a book experience, and I had 2 additional reenactors. One who does Sojourner Truth, and she was a Toastmaster in my club for a short time, Tia Adkins. And then I have a Susan B. Anthony that I recruited. So the 3 of us become the women's rights pioneers of the 19th century.
Oh, that is so awesome. That tells me that in Toastmasters, you can find your passion and keep your passion alive as we're still going through our day-to-day jobs, so that when the opportunity comes, you have that opportunity to take your passion forward. Well, let's lead right into your books, because now I would consider you an author. Would you tell me a little bit about your books?
All right. Well, I just want to segue to that last thing as advice for the listeners. And one is to approach the unfamiliar. Because if you approach the unfamiliar, and that's kind of what Toastmasters does, you get the courage to stumble and fail in front of friends so that you can develop the skills, just like Yolanda mentioned, but if you approach the unfamiliar, it may teach you about hidden talents. And it certainly did for me. Now, the author thing, I don't know if I can exactly attribute it to Toastmasters. I was writing for a women's journal. I became so passionate about bringing history to life that I was actually teaching via PowerPoint in Llewellyn's pub in a bar to a group of women in 2015. I mean, that's how incredible I took on this project. But I just kept writing an article for this women's journal that Lucy Knapp was doing, and I did it for free, and I researched things, and then I went to Webster University to finish up my degree, and I was writing and writing and writing, and I think writing a speech is good practice for writing. You have to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and build to something and conclude. So that is a good practice, Masters.
Well, also along that way, I remember that you were going through your higher education, getting your degree, and all along you continued your Toastmaster membership.
Yeah.
And I just want to applaud you for that, because a lot of people, you get a lot on your plate and Toastmasters tends to go to the side, but you kept it there in your pocket. And I know it made a big difference, because my last question is going to let you talk a little bit more about that last job you had and that you have retired from. So tell me about that job.
I was an executive director for a chamber of commerce, and that was Webster Grove, Shrewsbury, and Rock Hill. I did that for 11 years. I started there in 2011. One of the things that happened that I wanted to share, I did a series over the years of 190 podcasts called What's Up with Business, and it helped me focus on the local business and my commerce. And part of that skill came from Toastmasters. Again, there was an advanced booklet called Public Relations, and one of the assignments was to pretend you're a radio show guest, pretend with another club member. And while I was working through that book, I was also kind of coming to terms with being an empty nester. And my daughter had moved off to college, and that was really difficult for me emotionally. There was no one to cook dinner for, and it was challenging. And I must have posted a few things on Facebook about my struggles with being an empty nester. And lo and behold, Don Marsh, who did St. Louis on the Air, his producer contacted me and said, "We're going to do a show about dealing with being an empty nester. Would you like to be a guest?" And I am working on the PR book, and there's an assignment. So what I ended up doing, which was kind of cool, I had my evaluator listen to the live radio show of me being interviewed and evaluate me for that. So that was kind of fun. And I went back on Don Marsh's St. Louis on the Air for some suffrage event I was working on. So I was a guest on his show twice, and then did my podcast for the chamber. I just loved it. I really loved it. The other thing about Toastmasters and being a chamber director, I remember when I did my high performance leadership project. And one thing struck me in that book that has stayed with me is that the event or the project is never over until you thank people. And that is such an important thing to know. You may have wrapped up the physical event and packed everything up, cleaned up the room, did the financial accountant, but if you didn't thank your volunteers, your sponsors, all the people involved, appreciation is so important. And that's something that's very important to me.
Well, thank you for those insights, because you really hit. Remember, Toastmasters is where leaders are made and leaders learn. And you've really showed that in that. And to conclude my second part session with you, is that I want to congratulate you because I watched my Facebook feed and I saw the Rebecca Now Day posted and proclaimed throughout Webster Groves a few weeks ago. So congratulations to you. I'm going to have you back at the end for a little bit of a wrap up, but now I'm going to move back to my guest, Yolanda. So I'll let you video off and
Thank you.
hi, welcome back to the second part. You've got a flavor of what we're going to ask. I know a few things about you from my Facebook. I know you're a kayaker. I love now that I can call you a serial volunteer leader, community leader. And I know you're a public speaker. So let's talk about those parts of your life and how your Toastmasters skills kind of helped you or came into play. So tell me about it. Do you Toastmaster on the river?
Well, actually, yes, I do. When I paddled in 2017 down the river, I had business cards. And you have to understand, in a kayak, you have limited space. So the fact that I could reach into my pocket and get a business card was kind of interesting. But in Toastmasters, you have all these opportunities to do impromptu speaking. When I paddled down the Mississippi River, I ran into a lot of people who you have to ask questions to. Hi, you have a yacht club. Can we camp here? And if you don't ask, you're going to end up in the swamp beside it. So you have to be able to do that. And being African-American down the river, I had people who stopped and go like, there's a Black woman on the river. Can I take a picture? So it was an opportunity to represent a larger group. And we always have to remember that that impression is going to follow us throughout whatever we do. So paddling down the Mississippi River, even in Creve Court Lake, the ability to jump into your face in a nice way, non-threatening, of course, you understand. There was an outdoor event. And as a representative of the Tuskegee Airmen, we had summer camps. So I spotted some minority family members with some kids in the target area. And I said, you come over here. And I offered them the information about a camp. And the mom goes, yeah. She goes, I'll pass it on. I'm like, yes, please do. Well, that mom passed it on to somebody who was the typical helicopter mom. And that helicopter mom jumped on it. She goes, can my daughter go? I'm going, wait a minute. I think the slots are filled, but just send me a paragraph. I'll use that to send it forward just in case. Well, that just in case came out because later on somebody canceled. And that person who got that application and was so, can she go? Can she go? Ended up going to an all expense 1 week camp at an HBC, which is historically Black college. Of course, the other lady called back, says, my daughter go? And I'm going, you passed up that opportunity. That is to say, Toastmasters provides us the opportunity to speak up about what we believe in. And because we have that ability to speak up, we can influence people's lives. One of the keys, though, is what does another person need? Where is that belly button of it? Is it, I just want the facts? Or how are you changing the world? Touch my heart. Touch. So through Toastmasters and learning how to identify my audience and trying to identify their wants, which requires listening, then I'm able to hook people with scholarships to scholarship opportunities or jobs or other different passions. And occasionally I'm able to, hi, do you have a passion for gardening? Because I have 4 gardens that you can help with. Or drones. But that's what Toastmasters has helped me to do. Even on the river, where I'm talking to a group of diverse people, it allows me to say, how should I respond to that person?
Well, that leads me to thinking that through all those experiences, somebody's going to say, can you come to my school and talk to our kids? So tell me about your public speaking. That's the most recent I know of, but I'm sure you've been asked many times. So tell me what that has done for you and how that's going.
It's always funny. There's been opportunities where I've flown on my dime all the way to Seattle to speak to some individuals. but your legacy is long-term. I got a phone call or an email text, who knows in this damn period, from my 6th grade buddy. I don't keep touch with everybody, but I remember her, long story. And she goes, Yolanda, would you like to come to Colorado Springs? I'm like, oh yeah, maybe. I said, normally I just drive. I have to be able to drive. And she goes, I'll fly you. So my high school friend from 6th grade, who hasn't seen me from 20 years, but has seen what I have done on Facebook and through all the other things, flew me to Colorado Springs, flew me to Denver, drove 2 hours to pick me up because she didn't want me on an airplane waiting around extra hours, hosted me in her house, and I spoke to her elementary school in Manitou Springs, to the surprise of her principal, because there were people on stage that were veterans. And they actually got an opportunity, around 4 of them, to be the intro speakers, which was important to me because a couple of them were telling, well, this is my history. And I could see the kids going, oh, that's interesting. Old man on stage saying he flew. And one of them had some comedy. And I was like, oh, okay, can't go down that road. He's talking about Pokemon cards. I cannot be him. But because I had talked to my friend and I knew what had happened before, where somebody had talked about something totally inappropriate. Get this, somebody went with a strafing run to show elementary kids the value of Veterans Day. So his video was about people shooting other people from airplanes on the ground. Mm. Not exactly the message you want to go to kindergartners. My message was Veterans Day is a day of service. And so, hey, it's not just our service, it's your service. So how can you, young man, young lady, serve your family, your community? And pointing to Rebecca, how can you say thank you? Because that's what we want our kids to do. We want them to continue the legacy of service and to learn to thank those who serve them. So I gave them a task of listening to their parents and their grandparents' stories, which will make their grandparents happy, saying thank you, and then serve. Because of Toastmasters, I was able to do that. And I normally speak on African Americans in the military or the Tuskegee Airmen legacy, which is close to my heart. And I've changed those stories to make parables that I can relate that historical fact to something that youth and old folks can relate to today. And Toastmasters is giving me that skill.
I have a feeling that every one of your speeches has that call to action. You were just able to read that audience and give them a call to action. And my last segment that I want to talk with you is that serial volunteer. And we've got about, I'd say 3-4 minutes. So you can pick which topic you want, this table topic. You can either tell me more about your Tuskegee Airmen Legacy Program, or you can tell me more about that community gardening.
I'm gonna do both in 4 minutes. Right. So if you've got a high school senior or a person who wants to fly or STEM or wants to introduce to the drone, then you should look up the Tuskegee Airmen, because the Tuskegee Airmen, the men and women of World War II that were African Americans and white, some Haitians, one Chinese, got trained in segregated units all around the United States. Those gentlemen and women are, like the Greatest Generation, are dying at a rate. I think we have 4 pilots that saw combat still alive. But I work with the Tuskegee Airmen through the St. Louis chapter to ensure that there are programs that will introduce youth to STEM, to art, just to getting off their butt and doing something. On that same rail, I think that part of Toastmasters is you have to figure out where's your passion. What's your resource? Do you have time, energy, or money? Do you want to learn something? Do you need something? Can I help you? And unfortunately, or fortunately, one time I raised my hand and I said, oh, let me look at this restoration ranch garden, because maybe we can expand. And I like feeding people. I like eating. So Restoration Ranch, which is on the Illinois side, is, for my part, is a 10,000 square foot garden. And last year we donated over 2,500 pounds of vegetables and fruit, mostly vegetables, to neighborhood food pantries. There's opportunities for individuals, families, churches to come a day, come a week, come over and all. And it's just one way to empower people to make a difference in their life. And whatever organization that you belong to, every organization that I hear about says they need people. And my question to you all is, what are you doing? Can you give one day a month? Can you give $10? Because we all can do a little bit more. And if we all just do a little bit, I'm talking to you, we can change our environment, our communities, our families. But it starts with us. So I'm leading the pack and hoping somebody will follow.
Thank you, Yolanda. I also want to congratulate you because I searched and found that St. Louis County made a proclamation on July 1st, 2018, announcing Major Yolanda Wood Day. That was so awesome to know two women that I've been through Toastmasters have both had this recognition in their communities. I'm going to ask Rebecca to come back, and I'm going to ask iPhone Charles to close his video so we can get just the three of us on our screen, or ask my Zoom master to take care of that. We have about 5 or 6 minutes left. I want to give you both some closings. I had planned to share a little video kind of thing. I'll see if I can do a share screen, but I bet it's not going to let me. I'll just check it and we'll see what I get. Okay, well, we're kind of there. I'm going to click through a couple of these because you guys need to see the pictures. Let me move myself down here to the corner so you can see everybody. I'm going to make sure we get through these because I took too much effort to prepare them. There we go. All right. There is the river person. Here she is in this school. There she is speaking. How about this? This is the website where you can do more, restorationranchil.com. And now this is her day. So those are my little slides for my friend Yolanda's work in the community in the real world. Here comes Rebecca. These are her 2 books. She wrote a chapter in Living My Truth, which is an awesome book out there now, recently. And she's also written this book. You can find them on Amazon. Look up her name. This was posted because that was her recognition of her day. And here's her webpage that you can find out about her next life, her next chapter that's coming up with what she's going to do with her life. And these are the websites. I'll give it a few minutes for anybody who wants to write them down. Wish I was able to do more with the chat, but just catch them. They're pretty easy to remember. www.voicesofamericanherstory.com, and then Restoration Ranch IL. I kept thinking it was chill, but it's restorationranchil.com. Go visit those websites, and I think you'll find out what these 2 ladies have been doing in their real world life with their Toastmasters skills. We have about 6 minutes left. I'm gonna say, if you've got a question, put it in the chat. We'll see if anything comes up. And while they're coming up with questions, I'm going to go to Rebecca and let her have any closing statements she might have.
I will reiterate an encouragement to put yourself out there and try something new and different. The nice thing about Toastmasters is it's a safe space to practice. And in any personal development, you need confidence. Confidence is so key for people that want to achieve more in their life. And Toastmasters is a great confidence builder for people that are afraid of public speaking and leadership skills. And you might uncover some unhidden talents that you have and a lifetime passion like I did. And I hope you will.
I'm going to add to that, Rebecca. I remembered when you were talking about that book in the old legacy program. I'm pretty sure in the new pathways, you can develop a character, because I remember doing that book myself. And if I had taken it to heights, I would have ever become Indira Gandhi or Lily Tomlin. Because those were my choices back in that day.
It's kind of fun. I tried to do in one of these institutes, I tried to teach a class on reenacting, and I printed out a whole bunch of speeches from America and kind of led the class through it. But it's really fun to inhabit another person and bring them to life. It's very a unique experience.
Thank you. I'm going to actually take a question, this one from our audience member, Jackie Cam, and this is for Yolandia. What were you like before Toastmasters? Was there an aha moment? I wouldn't have thought to ask that question. Let's see if you can give her maybe a 1-minute table topic answer.
Before Toastmasters, I'm the original baby of the family, which means my father got remarried and had a kid 10 years later. And there's nothing for being the second youngest. And I was that I have to run fast or speak fast so somebody will listen to me, because they'll say, what did you say? But if I don't slide it in there. So I was that high energy person that tried to keep up with everybody else. And that went into my speaking engagements. What I found after being a recruiting squadron commander is your audience is key, because for me, I could correct something, move on, no problem. But if I correct you, somebody says, you're talking with the voice of God. I'm like, who, me? Because I was a squadron commander. So I had to learn how I was perceived as much as how I thought I was being perceived. Because it's one thing to say, fix your uniform. I forgot, I'm old. But that other person is traumatized. Now she hates me because I told her to correct her uniform. So that became an aha moment where I had to learn that the message and the messenger might have to change. It didn't always have to come from me, that I needed to use the strength that I had. So I could cheer you on and somebody else could smack you down. But I needed to get out of that women role, like, hi, I'm the public affairs officer, nothing to be about the public affairs officer. But I wanted to make sure that people knew that I had a backbone and structure and some force behind my cheering section. So that was my aha moment when I learned that the message and the messenger is a part of this communication link that I have to take into consideration.
All right. Well, thank you for answering that question.
Can I follow up on that?
I want to hear your side.
Yeah, I'm resonating with everything Yolandia just said. And I remember another self-development course I took where we learned the skill of speaking into another's listening. Okay, so in other words, instead of me just talking, it's like, okay, who am I with and how do I approach that person, and what's the way that they want to be spoken to? Like Yolanda said, you don't talk down to somebody and they're like humiliated. If you see that they are shy, you want to, give it the sandwich approach that we all learned in evaluating before you start telling them that they might want to look at this. So speak into their listening.
So for some of our folks out there who are working on their pathways, that means that's something they're going to learn in most of those higher levels when they're taking on a project and they're having to recruit, get volunteers to help them. And I'll give you my aha moment. My aha moment was very late in my Toastmasters career, and it was when I was the district governor, and I realized how much help I needed to ask for. And I never asked for help. That was the hardest thing I ever had to overcome, was the cold call to ask somebody in Toastmasters to do something for me. And just as you guys have echoed, it was, I had to find out what was in it for them first before I could get my ask out. So I used to be the kind of person who called up and said, "Hey, could you do this for me?" And I've learned now I needed to say, "Hey, how's your journey going? Where are you at? What are you doing first?" before I got that courage to ask. So I'm seeing a lot of great thank yous coming from our listeners out there in the chat. This is so heartwarming for me. I know we're at a 9:45. I didn't see any other questions. Let me scan it one more time just to see, but I'm pretty sure. Yeah. I want to thank you. Oh, I forgot to tell our listeners. This is one of my level 3 projects. It is doing the podcast, and that project, you have to do 6 10-minute podcasts. This is why I broke this session up as I did, because I plan to re-edit. And Yolanda and Rebecca, you may see this posted somewhere, possibly on my club's Free Toast Host site, but I will break it up, and that'll give me 4 of my 6 podcasts needed for that project. So thank you. And you know, when I called on you, that I was saying, "Help me, help me." And thank you for coming to my rescue. I don't have anything else. And so I think I'm going to let our folks go early and have a chance to get ready for that keynote speaker. Thank you all. Thank you, listeners, for your participation through the chat and being here, because I saw our participant number stay at 29 the whole time. So thank you. Thank you very much. I'll let you guys turn off your cameras. Anyone who needs to leave the break room and go on for the main event, feel free. And I'll hang out here a little while and read the list of the comments coming in, because we want to keep those. I may have to technically find out how I can make sure we keep a transcript of our chat.
You should be able to do it. If you hit the 3 dots on the bottom of the chat where you see the smiley face.
Wait a second here. Show chat previews. Oh.
And far right where you have the chats, you should have 3 dots.
All right.
It's the same place where you're.
I see it there, everyone. Okay, save chat. Thank you.
I don't know where it saves it, but you've got it.
I don't know where it's going to save to, but I clicked on it, so I should have it, because that's very key for this.
Learning to ask questions.
That's the whole part.
All right. Nobody has any questions?
Yeah, and I'm going to turn mine from speaker to gallery. There we go.
All right.
Well,
and I guess I will.
That was a great podcast. That was a great talk, everybody.
Well, thank you for that voice. I didn't know who's that coming from.
Maryland. I'm actually in California, but I'm in Mount Vernon. I'm so glad I joined District 8.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for speaking up. That's great to hear. This was a first time try for me, and if it wasn't for Michael McDonald and Taking It to the Streets as my #1 favorite song, we probably would not have come up with this idea for this session.
I'm trying to do something with 32 by 17 inch backyard for my garden.
Oh,
So I will go to your web.
Okay, well, I'm going to leave the room. We've still got 11 people hanging out, so I'll see you all in the main room.
So we just go to break out to Maine. Okay.
Okay, just leave.